How many times today did you make a decision you thought was completely yours? That coffee you bought, the video you clicked before this one, the clothes you chose. I have disturbing news. Most of these your decisions were planted in your mind by other people. And they use tricks so sophisticated that your conscious mind never stood a chance. And in this video, you'll discover 10 manipulation techniques so powerful they should be considered illegal. In 1961, a Yale professor conducted a frightening experiment and discovered something terrifying about human nature. Stanley Milgram put ordinary people in a room and asked them to administer electric shocks to strangers. Shocks that could kill. 2/3 of people obeyed until the end. They tortured other human beings simply because someone in a white coat told them to. Now imagine, if it's so easy to make normal people torture others, what else can they be manipulated to do without even realizing it? The first trick I'm about to reveal is happening to you right now as you watch this video. A young, attractive man walked through a mall, approaching random women and asking for their phone numbers for a date. Giving your number to a complete stranger is risky. As expected, most women said no, but there was a devastating difference depending on where he made the approach. When he approached women in front of certain stores, his success rate doubled. Can you guess what type of store increased his chances? It wasn't a chocolate or perfume shop. It was a flower shop. Machiavelli, 500 years ago, observed something this experiment proved scientifically. Men judge more by the eyes than by the hands. People are influenced by invisible associations they don't even realize they're making. Flowers are associated with romance. Being near flowers subconsciously activated romantic thoughts in those women, making them more receptive to a date invitation. They didn't know this. When asked afterward, all denied that flowers had any influence on their decisions. In another similar experiment, researchers tested different objects the man carried during the approach. One specific object drastically increased his chances of success. It was a guitar. Why? Because guitars activate associations with creativity, sensitivity, artistic talent. Women saw the guitar and subconsciously thought, this man must be interesting. This should deeply disturb you. Because it means your most important decisions, who to date, what to buy, who to vote for, are being influenced by environmental elements you don't even consciously perceive. Machiavelli knew that opportunity makes the thief, not just in the moral sense, but in the psychological sense. The surrounding context shapes our perception of reality without us knowing, and modern manipulators have mastered this. Real estate agents place flowers and soft music in homes for sale. Luxury cars are advertised in success scenarios. Politicians give speeches with flags and patriotic symbols in the background. Every element is calculated to activate specific associations in your mind. And it works because we process these associations faster than our conscious thoughts. But there's something even more subtle than visual context, how they make you act first, and only then manipulate you through your own actions. Imagine you're at work, and a colleague you barely know offers you a soda. You weren't even thirsty, but you accept out of politeness. 20 minutes later, this same colleague asks you to stay late to help with a project that's not your responsibility. You'd probably say yes. Seems irrational, doesn't it? A $2 soda makes you agree to work free for 2 hours. But this happens every day, millions of times, because they're using against you one of the most powerful psychological weapons that exist. In 1971, psychologist Dennis Regan conducted an experiment that forever changed our understanding of human influence. He put participants in a room to evaluate paintings alongside an assistant disguised as a participant. For half the people, the assistant left the room during break and returned with 2 sodas, one for him, another as a gift for the real participant. For the other half, the assistant simply returned from break without bringing anything. At the end of the session, the assistant asked everyone to buy raffle tickets. The result was devastating. People who got the soda bought twice as many tickets. A soda that cost a few cents made people spend dollars. But the most disturbing part of the experiment came later. Reagan discovered the soda worked even when people didn't like the assistant. Even when they found him annoying, they still bought more tickets from him. La Rochefoucauld, the French philosopher, observed this 300 years before the experiments. Our favors are often merely investments we hope will yield interest. He saw that people rarely do favors out of kindness. They do them to create psychological debts. Years later, a banker taught me this in practice. He was describing investment products that didn't interest me when he said something that made me wake up. This next product is one I'd recommend even to my mother. Instantly, I felt deep trust in him. Not because the product was better, but because he'd created a sense of family unity. He was including me in the same circle of care he had for his own family. This is what Robert Cialdini calls the unity principle. When someone shows you belong to the same group, family, profession, city, values, you automatically want to cooperate with that person much more than with strangers. Warren Buffett mastered this brilliantly. In his letters to shareholders, he often wrote, "I'll say what I'd tell my family today if they asked me about Berkshire Hathaway's future." Using family language, he made thousands of investors feel like close relatives receiving intimate advice. Reciprocity works because our survival as a species depended on cooperation. Those who didn't return favors were expelled from the group and died. So we evolved with an automatic impulse to reciprocate any kindness, even when we know we're being manipulated. You can break this cycle, but only if you recognize the favor for what it really is. Not a gift, but an investment. And you don't owe interest on an investment you didn't ask to receive. But there's something even more primitive than reciprocity: how they hijack your emotions through addictive cycles. You're going to die. Me too. We all will. And who profits from this aren't the philosophers who accepted this reality, but the manipulators who turned our mortality into currency. Thomas Hobbes, in 1651, made a brutal observation about political power. Fear is the safest passion to rely on. He realized that frightened people make predictable choices, bad choices, and that whoever controls fear controls decisions. 400 years later, psychologists Jennifer Lerner and Dasha Keltner proved Hobbes scientifically. They showed that people in a state of fear make pessimistic estimates about almost everything: their chances of success, the probability of negative events, even the value of objects they want to buy. But they discovered something even more sinister. Fear doesn't just change our decisions, it shuts down our ability to think critically. When we're afraid, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logical reasoning, becomes less active. It's as if someone simply turned off our intelligence. And this isn't an accident. It's evolution. When our ancestors heard a roar in the forest, it wasn't time to philosophize about the nature of predators. It was time to run. Fear exists to make us act fast, not to make us think well. Modern manipulators understood this perfectly. Insurance companies show you horrible accidents before selling policies. Politicians talk about terrible threats before asking for more power. Salespeople create artificial urgency. Only 3 units left to trigger your fear of missing opportunities. And it works. When you're afraid, you don't analyze whether the threat is real. You don't question whether the offered solution makes sense. You don't research alternatives. You simply act to get rid of the feeling of fear. The most perverse thing is that fear is addictive for those who use it. Hobbes saw this in the rulers of his time. Once they discover they can control people through fear, they never stop creating new threats. Because frightened people are controllable people. You can break this pattern, but not by trying to be brave. Courage is what you feel after fear has passed. The real defense is to pause. Whenever someone presents you with a threat and immediately offers a solution, stop, breathe, ask, who profits if I believe this threat? Because usually the answer is the same person who's telling you about it. But there's something more subtle than fear. How they hijack your identity to make you act against your own values. Clouds or coins? A strange question, but your answer will reveal how your mind is being programmed without you knowing. Researchers created an identical online furniture store for 2 groups of people. The only difference? The background image. Half the visitors saw soft, fluffy clouds. The other half saw shiny coins. The result was devastating. People who saw clouds focused on comfort and furniture quality. People who saw coins focused only on price and looked for the cheapest options. Same products, same prices, same people. But different background images created completely opposite buying mindsets. Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher who saw through the illusions behind our desires, had predicted this. The world is my representation. He realized we don't see reality directly. We see through mental filters that can be subtly altered. And when people were asked if clouds or coins influenced their decisions, they all laughed and denied any influence. They were absolutely certain they were independent, rational shoppers. This should alarm you, because it means apparently irrelevant visual elements are constantly shaping your values, priorities, and decisions without you having the slightest awareness of it. Banks place images of happy families to activate thoughts about security and stability before selling insurance. Gyms use photos of perfect bodies to activate dissatisfaction with your current appearance. Investment sites show ascending charts and wealth symbols to activate greed and urgency. Each image is a small piece of software being installed in your mind, altering how you'll process the information that comes next. Schopenhauer warned that we see things not as they are, but as we are. But manipulators discovered how to temporarily alter as we are through what they place before our eyes. In another impressive experiment, researchers simply placed the image of the thinker sculpture in the corner of the screen while people performed tasks. Result? They became more analytical and made fewer errors. A simple image of someone thinking made people actually think better. If a statue can make you smarter, imagine what advertisements, social media, and commercial environments are doing to your mental state daily. Schopenhauer's defense was radical. Constantly question your own perceptions. Before making any important decision, look around. What images, colors, symbols are present? They might be programming your mind without you knowing, but there's something even more disturbing than visual manipulation. How they directly attack your memories. I love you, I hate you, you're amazing, you're terrible, I'm sorry, you're the one who's wrong. If someone did this to you, you'd call it abusive, but when companies, politicians, and algorithms do it, you call it a personalized experience. Baruch Spinoza, the philosopher who lived rejected by his own community for speaking inconvenient truths, observed something disturbing about human emotions. No one knows what an affected body can do. He realized that when our emotions are manipulated, we lose control over our own actions. In 2018, researchers studied a phenomenon called trauma bonding, the psychological connection that forms between victims and abusers. They discovered that alternating between punishment and reward creates one of the most powerful forms of psychological control that exists. The mechanism is simple and brutal. First, they make you feel special. Then they make you feel rejected. When you're in rejection, they offer you crumbs of approval, and you become addicted to those crumbs. Social media uses this daily. One post gets many likes. You feel validated. The next gets few. You feel rejected. So you post more, desperate to return to the validation state. The algorithm traps you on an emotional roller coaster where you never know when the next dose of approval will come. Dating apps do worse. They show you perfect people who don't respond to your messages. Then they show you average people who show interest. You reject the average ones because you're addicted to the emotion of trying to win over the perfect ones. Even knowing the perfect ones are probably bots or fake profiles. Spinoza saw this in relationships of his time. He observed people became dependent on those who made them alternate between joy and sadness. The more uncertain the joy, the more intense it will be, he wrote. He realized unpredictable rewards create stronger dependence than constant rewards. This happens because our brain releases more dopamine in anticipation of reward than in the reward itself. When you don't know if you'll receive approval, your brain stays in constant anticipation. You become addicted to the possibility, not the reality. And manipulators know this. They don't give you what you want. They give you hope of getting what you want. And they keep you chasing that hope indefinitely. The defense Spinoza offered is radical. Sadness is man's passage from greater to lesser perfection. In other words, every negative emotion is information about something you're losing. The question is, were you really gaining anything, or just the illusion of gaining? When someone makes you feel bad to then make you feel good, they're not giving you anything. They're selling you the solution to a problem they themselves created, but there's something that attacks you without resistance. Your own memory. Do you remember the first time you saw this channel? Maybe it was a few months ago, or weeks. You probably remember thinking something like, interesting, I'll give it a chance. And since then, you've been following because you like the content. I could be completely wrong about this memory, but here's what's terrifying. If I repeat this version a few times, there's a good chance you'll start remembering it this way, even if it's not true. Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher who questioned all absolute truth, made a prophetic observation in 1882. There are no facts, only interpretations. He realized our memory doesn't record events like a camera. It reconstructs events every time we remember them, and each reconstruction can change the original memory. Elizabeth Loftus proved this devastatingly in 1974. She showed car accident videos to different groups and then asked a seemingly simple question about the car's speed. To one group she asked, "How fast were the cars going when they collided?" To another, "How fast were the cars going when they smashed?" The word smashed made people estimate speeds 20% higher than the word collided, even seeing exactly the same video. A week later, Loftus returned and asked if they remembered seeing broken glass in the accident. There was no broken glass in the video, but 32% of people who heard smashed swore they saw broken glass. Only 14% of those who heard collided reported glass. A single word had implanted a false memory in the minds of normal people. Nietzsche had predicted this when he wrote about his own experience. "My memory says I did this. My pride says I cannot have done this. Eventually, my memory yields." He realized our memories are constantly edited by our desires, fears, and social pressures. Modern manipulators perfected this. Politicians don't deny inconvenient facts. They offer alternative interpretations until you start doubting what really happened. Companies don't lie about their products. They highlight positive aspects until you remember a better experience than you actually had. And it works because, as Nietzsche observed, we prefer memories that make us feel good about ourselves. If someone offers a version of events that makes us seem smarter, more important, or more right, our brain accepts that version as truer than reality. The scariest part is, this happens without you noticing. You don't feel your memories being altered. You simply remember the new version as if it had always been that way. Nietzsche offered a brutal defense. Don't believe anything just because you remember it. Document important facts. Record important conversations. Write down your decisions the moment you make them, because your memory isn't your ally. It's disputed territory. But there's something even more fundamental they control: how you think through the words you use. Climate change or global warming, two ways of saying the same thing. But one makes you think of natural, gradual changes. The other makes you think of dangerous, accelerated warming. And this subtle difference changed the course of political debates for decades. But there's an even more brutal linguistic manipulation. A salesman was losing clients because he couldn't sell his $75,000 product. The price seemed too high, so he made a small change in the presentation. Before mentioning the real price, he'd say jokingly, "Obviously, I can't charge $1 million for this product." Then he'd reveal $75,000. The result? Almost no one tried to negotiate the price anymore. $75,000 seemed like a bargain compared to the $1 million echoing in their minds. Ludwig Wittgenstein, the philosopher who revolutionized our understanding of language, made a discovery that should concern you. The limits of my language are the limits of my world. He realized we don't use words to describe thoughts. We use words to create thoughts. Frank Luntz proved this systematically. As a political consultant, he tested thousands of words to discover which generated the emotional reactions his clients wanted. He found that death tax made people reject inheritance taxes more than estate tax, even though it's exactly the same tax. The salesman's trick works by the same principle. $1 million creates a mental anchor. Any smaller number seems reasonable in comparison. It doesn't matter that the million was completely irrelevant and mentioned jokingly. The brain makes the comparison automatically. Wittgenstein had predicted this when he observed that a different word leads to a different thought. He saw that when we change the words a person uses, we literally change how they think about reality. This happens because our language isn't neutral. Each word carries specific emotional and visual associations. Refugees evokes images of people fleeing war. Illegal immigrants evokes images of people breaking laws. Same people, completely different realities in your mind. Companies use this constantly. They don't sell insurance, they sell protection. They don't charge fees, they charge investments. They don't fire employees. They do human capital restructuring. Each linguistic change was tested to reduce your emotional resistance. And social media took this to the extreme. Algorithms analyze which words make you click, share, comment. Then they saturate your timeline with those specific words. You're not seeing news, you're seeing a stream of language personalized to hack your emotional reactions. Wittgenstein warned that when we allow others to control our language, we lose control over our own thoughts. To imagine a language means to imagine a form of life, he wrote. Whoever controls your words controls how you live. The defense is simple but requires discipline. Pay attention to the words that are repeated to you. Ask, why this specific word? What happens if I use a different word to describe the same thing? Climate change becomes global warming. Investment becomes expense. Protection becomes insurance. Unique opportunity becomes sales pressure. When you change the words, you change how you think. And when you change how you think, you regain control over your decisions. But there's something operating at a more primitive level than language. Your evolutionary instincts programmed millions of years ago. Baby crying, scarce food, approaching predator, available sexual partner. Your body reacted to at least one of these situations, even reading about them. Small changes in heart rate, muscle tension, focused attention. Because these are situations that decided life or death for our ancestors for millions of years. But there's an experiment that proves how primitive and automatic these instincts are. Researchers showed photos with different background images to babies just 1.5 years old, children who could barely speak and had limited logical reasoning. To one group, they showed lone people. To another, 2 separate people. To the third, 2 people standing shoulder to shoulder, cooperating. During the experiment, researchers accidentally dropped objects on the floor. The result was devastating. Only 20% of babies who saw lone or separate people got up to help, but 60% of those who saw cooperation helped immediately. 1.5-year-old babies, without complex reasoning capacity, without developed language, but already programmed to respond to visual cues of cooperation versus individualism. Sigmund Freud, the doctor who dared to map hidden territories of the human mind, made a disturbing discovery about consciousness. The ego is not master in its own house. He realized most of our behavior is controlled by unconscious impulses we don't even know exist. And if babies react this way, imagine what happens to adults constantly exposed to these manipulations. Researchers discovered that simply placing the image of the thinker sculpture in the corner of the screen makes people perform tasks more analytically and make fewer errors. A statue of someone thinking literally makes you think better. If you put photos of people running, people work faster. If you put images of libraries, they become quieter. If you put money symbols, they become more competitive and less cooperative. In 2008, neuromarketing researchers connected electrodes to consumers' brains while they watched commercials. They discovered that up to 95% of purchase decisions happen in the limbic system, the primitive part of the brain that evolved millions of years before language or logic. These researchers identified specific triggers that activate automatic responses. Scarcity triggers fear of starving. Social approval triggers fear of group expulsion. Sexuality triggers reproduction impulses. Status triggers hierarchy needs. And most disturbing, these triggers work even when you know they're being used against you. Modern companies studied these impulses like scientists. Dating apps use photos of attractive people to trigger sexual impulses, then charge you to increase your chances. Games use sounds and colors that simulate successful hunting to keep you addicted to virtual rewards. Social media are even more sophisticated. They mapped that likes triggered the same neurological circuit as tribal approval. That notifications trigger the same alert as possible threats. That infinite scrolling simulates foraging, the behavior our ancestors used to search for food. You're being treated like a lab animal whose instincts are studied, mapped and exploited for profit. Freud offered a radical defense: make the unconscious conscious. He believed that when you understand your own primitive impulses, you can choose whether to obey them or not. Next time you feel unexplained urgency to buy, click, or act, pause. Ask, what primitive instinct is being triggered? Hunger, fear, sexual desire, need for status? As Freud said, you may not control your impulses, but you can control your actions. But the final trick is the most sophisticated of all, making you think you're choosing freely when your options have been carefully limited. Are you free? Of course you are. No one forces you to do anything. You choose where to work, what to eat, who to date. You have total control over your life. Now answer me, why do 90% of people pick the first item they see at eye level in the supermarket? Why does the vast majority accept the first option in digital menus? Why are you probably watching this video on YouTube instead of an alternative platform? Jean-Paul Sartre, the philosopher who fought against all forms of oppression, made a radical statement: we are condemned to freedom. He believed humans are fundamentally free to choose, and that this freedom is both a gift and a curse. But he lived before the age of algorithms. Richard Thaler, behavioral economist, destroyed our illusion of free choice with a simple discovery: whoever controls how options are presented controls which option you'll choose. He called this choice architecture, the art of influencing decisions through how alternatives are organized. In the famous school cafeteria experiment, Thaler simply changed the position of foods. He placed fruits at eye level and sweets on lower shelves. Fruit consumption increased 25% with no prohibition, no advertising, no coercion, just by changing where things were. This should scare you, because it means your free choices are the product of decisions other people made about how to present options to you. Netflix doesn't show you all available movies. It shows you movies the algorithm wants you to watch, organized so you'll probably choose what they want. Google doesn't show you all search results. It shows you results organized so you'll probably click where they want you to click. Even your political options are architected. Election polls don't just measure opinion, they influence opinion by showing which candidates are viable. Debates don't present all possible positions. They present only positions that fit the television entertainment format. Sartre warned that freedom is what you do with what's been done to you. But he didn't foresee they'd control what's done to you by subtly limiting your options. The most sophisticated manipulation isn't forcing you to do something. It's making you think you're choosing freely among options that were carefully selected to serve others' interests. And it works, because our brain takes shortcuts. When we see organized options, we assume all important possibilities are represented. When we see a highlighted option, we assume it must be the best. When we see many similar options, we choose the one that seems middle. Thaler discovered you can make people choose almost anything just by controlling how many options they see, in what order they see those options, which option comes pre-selected, and what information accompanies each option. The real defense isn't trying to be more rational. It's questioning who architected your options. Before choosing, ask, what alternatives aren't being shown to me? Who benefits if I choose the available options? Sartre was right about one thing: you are condemned to freedom, but only if you fight to constantly expand the range of possibilities you consider. Now that you've seen how they manipulate you at every possible level, the final question is, how do you defend yourself? Mastering these tricks is just the beginning. Click the video on screen to discover how to use philosophy to develop the kind of mental power that no manipulation can break. You'll learn secrets few know about psychological resistance. Click the video on screen now.